Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on writing and publishing a book review. Today's presenters are Alison Mero, the managing editor at Clemson University Press, Elise Wallace, the deputy director at the Citadel, and she is also the former book review editor for South Carolina Libraries Journal, Stacy Winchester, the research data librarian at the University of South Carolina, and she is our current book review editor for the South Carolina Libraries Journal. And before we begin, I just want to discuss some webinar norms and technical aspects. We ask that all attendees mute their microphones. We ask that all attendees turn off their video camera in order to save on bandwidth. If you have any questions or technical problems, please ask using the chat box. To make the screen of the PowerPoint bigger, you may click on Hide Everyone. You can also zoom in or out of the PowerPoint screen. You can also take screenshots of the screen. After the webinar, a link to the recording and the PowerPoint slides will be sent out to registered participants.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Well, you're supposed to be muted, so I guess don't respond.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning. I'm glad to be here. My name is Alison Mero. I am managing editor of Clemson University Press. And I come from the perspective of a publisher, but also as a scholar. I have a PhD in musicology. I have published reviews. I have taught graduate students how to write reviews. So that's where I'm coming from on this. And my comments are broader and more general. I'm really glad that our other presenters will be talking about very specific things related to South Carolina Libraries, the journal. But I hope that what I have to say can be applied regardless of where you decide you want to publish. There we go. Oh, they can see my paused app. You can't see me advance my slides right now, can you?
No, we can't.
Okay, let's try that again. We had this problem in the test, so we're gonna. Okay, can you see something different now?
Yes.
Thank you, Megan. I appreciate you confirming things for me. Okay. One of the most important things you can do in your review is set the right tone. Book reviews can be a really great way to make friends or enemies. I guarantee you that if no one else reads your review, the author will read it and the publisher will read it. And that means that that author who spent a lot of time writing that book, if you are not kind, is going to be very put out. So it's helpful to remember how much work the author and the publisher put into making that book. As a publisher right now, I know how much time goes into the process of making a beautiful book. That doesn't mean you need to be sycophantic. Don't praise effusively, but be generous in your observations. And really, like, the watchword is just be kind. Shouldn't we all be kind in all of our dealings with other people? How long should your review be? So I actually looked at several different library journals. And so I've listed here, they range anywhere from 500 words to 1,700 words. So American Archivist, Journal of Education for Library and Information Science really tended to be much longer, really on that 1,700. I even found a couple that were close to 2,000 words. Libraries, Culture, History, and Society, Library Quarterly, they tended to have word counts around 1,000. South Carolina Libraries wants reviews around 500 words. And you'll find that most journals will ask for the length that they want. So don't go writing a 10-page in-depth analysis of a book if your journal really only wants a page and a half, 2 pages. So know what your audience and your journal will expect from your review. This is really a rough template. And this is based off my own experience, but also after having read a lot of reviews. This tends to be the general order. Sometimes reviewers will mix it up. That's okay. But these are the main content points you should include. It's good to start off with a description and summary. What is the book about? Is there something you need to know to understand why the book is important? Is there something special about the methodology that your reader would want to understand to know where your review is going to go? This is a good place to talk about the author if it's relevant. Is it the author's first book? Is it their 10th? Is this something that this is the worldwide expert on this subject? Or is this somebody who really has a background in a completely different field and is changing their focus? This matters. It also may not. So the amount of time you devote to that section really is going to depend on the book and the point you want to make. Typically then, the review will shift into highlighting strengths of the book, then weaknesses, and then a conclusion. And the conclusion doesn't need to be long. We're really talking like a sentence, maybe two. It's the takeaway you want your reader to have. And so I thought, because it's easy to talk about abstract, it would be helpful to do a breakdown and an analysis of a single review. And so I went to South Carolina Libraries, the May 2018 issue, and I found a review. And I kind of broke it down. So here's what this reviewer did, Mariana Cawley. The book is Newspaper Wars, Civil Rights and White Resistance in South Carolina. And so we start off, the very first thing is what the book is about in very broad, generalized strokes. Then it moves down to the specifics of the time period discussed. This book analyzes really two particular time periods and the major political moments that were going on then. Then we get into the main Black newspaper founder. What issues was he involved with? Equal pay, voter registration, those sorts of things. Then the review talks about how the white-run newspapers would respond to Black issues. And you'll notice here, we're really about halfway through the review, maybe more than halfway through the review. And this is less about analysis of good, bad, and more summary and contextualizing what the book is about. This is a useful thing for your reader at this point. The amount of time that this author is spending on summarizing the book is more than I would see in a lot of other reviews. But again, knowing the audience, this kind of makes sense. South Carolina Libraries, you're writing for other librarians. You're not writing for civil rights scholars who are already going to have this information in their back pocket and know it. So this is helpful. We do get a bit of background on the author. What I really liked about this review is that they actually talk about other books and dissertations on this topic and then bring it to the point that this book is saying something new and something different. It's moving beyond these other publications. That's great. Speaking as someone who works in scholarly publishing and in fact acquires scholarly books, one of the things I always ask authors is, what are you bringing, what are you adding to the conversation? And I love that this reviewer picked up on that and totally says, here is what this book brings to the conversation, brings that is new to conversation. It ends with a recommendation that libraries that want more on South Carolina history and or the civil rights era should look into getting this book. That's the takeaway. That makes sense. Again, for the audience, that is a really helpful thing. When you are reviewing a book, you are basically sharing your expertise. The word criticism often means nitpicking, but what we're really talking about in terms of criticism in a review is contextualizing. A good critic has the expertise to say, I have seen 600 films in this genre, and I can tell you that this film I just watched is good, bad, or indifferent because I understand all these other films that I've seen. That's what you're doing as a book review. I am a librarian, I am a scholar, I know this content. And I'm sharing with you because I know this content that this is a good explanation of this content. The book does a good job of doing what it says it's going to do. Just to give you an example of what a not great review looks like, an analysis for that, I pulled a review of one of Clemson University Press's recent titles. And as I explain this, my big point I want to make here is that very early in this review, it becomes clear that this review is not about the book as much as it's about the author who wrote the review. This review is from a nearly finished doctoral student who seems more interested in proving his bona fides than in framing a good review of the book. So he starts off, Granville Bantock is a composer, by the way, in case you didn't know that. And he notes that Bantock is underserved in the scholarly literature. Good. 2, this is a really welcome and useful book, so glad to see it. And then paragraphs 3 to 7 are complaints about inaccuracies sprinkled with occasional bits of praise. And I put a quote here, whilst these are only a few examples, further biographical and source inaccuracies. Sorry. My words are actually being hidden. So, sorry, I can't read the quote fully. The reader is urged to check details with original sources. The list of biographical sources, however, is a gift to any researcher looking for Bantock literature of all shapes and sizes, from academic research to historic press reviews. So this is a little quote, is a little example of how he's picking things apart while throwing in praise. It's a mixed review. And oh, sorry. I understand that this is not a flawless book. I mean, you're librarians, you've seen bibliographic guides to research. It's impossible to have a perfect one. And I'm not saying the guy is wrong about the inaccuracies. I'm just saying it comes across like he has an axe to grind. He's upset that he wasn't the one to write this book, if that makes any sense. And so he's picking it apart. Moving on to though, but what do you do if the book is really bad? So the reason I brought up that other review was because one of the real problems that a pitfall for reviewers, is to let the review become an outlet for your own soapbox, or for if you've got an axe to grind, or it can come across that way even if you don't mean it. But on the other hand, what do you do if the book is really bad? Sometimes there's bad books. It does happen. It's worth kind of trying to figure out, what sorts of flaws are there? Is this errors of fact, poor writing, poor organization, faulty premise? What's going on here? Are the problems because of the author? Are they because of the press, or both? Now, if this is a scholarly book published by a scholarly press, it made it through peer review. Can you see any merits at all? And so it's worth thinking through, like, it's okay to identify problems in a book. I think and this again is where it comes down to your area of expertise. If you are the expert on this topic and you see problems, then you are probably the person who should be pointing those problems out. But if you can't say some nice things, it might be worth trying to pick a different book. Certainly, publishing book reviews is a great way to get publications. They're shorter than a lot of scholarly articles. They don't go through peer review most often, and that makes it easier to get them published. So book reviews are a great thing to be writing, but you should have some kind of say in what the book is that you're going to review. So it would be an unpleasant experience for me if I had to write a book review about a book that I didn't like, or couldn't at least find something enjoyable in it. So I would want the same thing for you. I would want you to have a good experience writing a review of a book that you actually have some nice things to say about. And that is all I have to say right now. I will stop sharing my screen and turn it back over to Megan.
If anyone has any questions for Alison, you can go ahead and add them to the chat.
I'm pleased Edward knows who Bantock is. I am a British music scholar by training, so I was very excited to publish a book about a British composer, but not many people outside of me, the author, know a lot about Van Tuck.
Well, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so we're going to go on to our next presenter. And of course, if you have any questions along the way, just add them to the chat. Oh, that was Edward that put something in the chat. But we're going to move on to our next presenter, Elise.
All right. Well, I'm not very tech savvy, but I do have a PowerPoint slide. I guess I'll just pull that up. All right. So I was a book review editor for South Carolina Libraries from 2013 till just a couple years ago. And it was a fun experience because most of the books that we sent out to reviewers were not very academic. And so I enjoyed many of these smaller books about South Carolina. For example, one of the books that was reviewed is called The Dark Side of Eden, Wicked Edisto. It was a book about pirates in Edisto. And then The Lumber Boom of Coastal South Carolina, a 19th century shipbuilding and the devastation of forests in South Carolina. That was one. A Culinary History of Myrtle Beach was another. Sal and Amanda Take Morgan's Victory March to the Battle of Cowpens, and that was a children's book. The Life of Mickey Spillane, History of South Carolina Lighthouses. Anyway, so lots of interesting little books about South Carolina, so that made it fun for me. You know, the reviewers didn't really have to have any experience or expertise in the topic of the books. So as the first editor of this new edition of the South Carolina Library.
I'm seeing your PowerPoint.
Can you see it?
I cannot.
Oh, rats. Okay, let me, do I need to press share? Why is this? Oh, application window. Okay, sorry. Let me know if you can see it now. Can you see it now?
No, not yet.
Oh. Okay. Megan, do you have it? Can you
Yes. Yeah, I'll go
pull
ahead.
it up? I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
You're so sweet. Okay. So can I advance these, or can you, or do you have to do it for me? Okay, there we go.
I might have to do it.
Yeah, okay. So what I had to do was find publishers. Of course, the first thing I did probably was to Google South Carolina book publishers, and I found that Skyway, can't click on that, but if you go to skyway.net, they have a long list of publishers. And that was very helpful. The ones that are there now are different from the ones that, some of them are different. USC Press is one, was the best resource for books because most of them are about South Carolina. And then my colleague had gone to a conference and spoke with several publishers who gave her their information. So I was able to make a big list of book publishers and figured out who the contacts were, and I created a table that would help me get organized. Megan, can you advance the slide for me?
I'm sorry, I might have to close out of it and go back to it.
Oh, so sorry. So then I had to gather the reviewers. Like, where am I going to find people who want to review for our journal? And of course, I called someone, I can't remember who, sorry, at SCLA, and there was a post on the website for reviewers, people who were interested in reviewing, to contact me. And I called the University of South Carolina School of Library and Information Science and asked if they could put it on their listserv, which they did. And there were a lot of students who were eager to review books for their portfolios. And then the Southeast Library Association and Library Journal had pre-approved reviewers. However, I don't know if I used that list. So I gathered all of the people who contacted me who were interested in reviewing. I did not put them through any kind of criteria test. I didn't ask them if they had experience or what. Well, I did actually ask them what their special interests are, because I thought that was the way to go with reviewing books, but it turned out it wasn't necessary for the books that were being published in South Carolina, especially, not especially needed. So I created a table of the volunteers and their contact information and their snail mail addresses, because I was going to have the publishers send the books to the reviewers so that they could, get a free copy and then write a review for our journal. And most of the publishers were thrilled to send a copy because they knew that this would be free publicity in our journal. And then once I got the list of the reviewers, I sent them the guidelines on, the type of books we were looking for and what to include in a book review. Megan, can you move the slide for me? Perfect. So as I said, the publishers were happy to send out the books. What I did was I sent the list. I got a list of all the books that were published in the last couple of years from the publishers, and I sent the list out to the reviewers and asked them which books they were interested in reviewing. And then it was sort of a first come, first served basis on whether you got the book you wanted to review or not. And if you couldn't do the book that you wanted, you could choose a different book. So I had to establish a due date because the journal is only published twice a year, and I was in pretty close contact with Brent Appling, who was the editor. I was able to submit reviews fairly close to the publication date, but I would say 2 months before publication date would be the best time to make sure that the reviewers are working on their reviews and sending them in so that you could look at them and edit them and then send them back for any kind of changes that needed to be done. And frankly, I was really impressed with the reviews that came in. Very, very small changes were necessary. And so it was kind of a short process, just sending it back for corrections. Let's see. Yeah. So once I got the title of the reviewer that the reviewers wanted to review, I would send their contact or snail mail address to the publisher and say, this person would like to review this book. And they would send it to the reviewer, and that would start the process. I think I have another slide, Megan. Okay. What I would recommend you do, you who are interested in reviewing for this journal, is go back and look at the old editions and see what books what the book reviews were like in those editions. You'll get a really good idea of how to write a book review. I don't think I rejected any book reviews. I got a lot of book reviews, which sometimes I had too many because the journal only wanted to publish 2 or 3 reviews. Sometimes I had to keep the reviews that came in for that publication for the next issue. So that was okay. It was a little disappointing, obviously, to have to wait another 6 months for your publication. But so my advice would be to get yours in early so that the edits can be finished. And frankly, I tended to put those in priority. That whoever came in first would be the first published, assuming that it was a good review. Let's see. I really enjoyed the reviews that included personal insights, and I have a couple of examples I wanted to read to you. This one was by Nancy Shore. She reviewed A History of South Carolina Barbecue, and this is how she starts her review. Before reading this book, I wouldn't have thought that the origins and definitions of barbecue as a cooking method and foodstuff would be so hotly contested or controversial. I grew up in the South, so I know that there are regional differences and perspectives surrounding what a given population considers barbecue. She spelled it BBQ, and then barbecue with the dashes, and then Q and barbecue. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 different spellings. Just agreeing on a spelling can take time. I also know that some people like to argue. That's how she started her review, and I liked her sense of humor. And then in this review for a book called In the Garden of Stone, a review by Catherine Wesley, she says, well, this is a story of 50 years in the life of an Appalachian family. So this is a novel. And she says, the language is beautiful, lyrical, but never overblown. The characters are real, fully drawn, all human, all flawed to some degree. Even the minor characters feel alive and breathing. The book imparts a powerful sense of place. The contrast could not be greater between the soul-killing mining village and the soul-sustaining mountain wilderness homestead. So I guess it all depends on who your editor is and what kind of books they're interested in. That might be a conversation you want to have with the editor. Let's see. So don't reveal the ending, of course. You want to leave the reader wanting to get the book. And don't be too critical. If you can't say anything nice, then pick another book. And that's all my experience was very pleasant. I don't think I would have done very well if they were academic books. Only because I'm not really much of an academic. All righty. Anybody have any questions? Okay.
Well, I'm not seeing.
Oh, sorry, Megan. I didn't hear you. Go right ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to transition to you, so please go ahead.
Great. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Stacy Winchester. Give me just a moment. I'm going to get my slides up on the screen for you. Okay. Megan, would you please verify that you are seeing my slide?
Yes, I can see your slides.
All right. That is awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for being here today. My name is Stacy Winchester. I think I was introduced at the beginning. I'm the research data librarian at the University of South Carolina, and I'm the new book review editor for South Carolina Libraries. In fact, this upcoming issue that we'll be publishing in the late fall, early winter is my first issue. So fun fact, I lost my internet connection while Elise was talking, which causes two potential concerns for me. One, I didn't hear a lot of what she said, so please forgive me if I repeat something that she said to you already. And two, if I disappear, it might be because my internet has left me again, but let's hope not. If you have questions while I'm talking, please go ahead and pop them in the chat. Megan, feel free to interrupt me, or we can save them and read them out at the end. Okay, so our previous speakers have done an excellent job. I'm talking about book reviews, and I'm here kind of transitioning from what Elise was talking about. I'm here and hoping that you might be interested in publishing a book review for South Carolina Libraries specifically. So I'm going to talk a little bit. I'll try not to repeat anything that Elise said about selecting a book. I'm going to talk about our book review guidelines, and then I'll talk specifically about how you will submit a book review and what can happen from there. So why would you want to write a book review for South Carolina Libraries? It's a great little publication. We're an open access publication just for librarians and library workers and people interested in libraries in South Carolina. It's a great publishing opportunity, particularly if you're new to publishing. It's a great way to get your name out there, and it's a great way to share information with colleagues, about a book that you've read. So as for selecting a title, as Elise made it clear, I have some titles that you can select from. The easiest way for you to initiate writing a book review for South Carolina Libraries is to contact me. I have books up for review from USC Press, and I have one from Clemson University Press, and I'll have more going forward. However, as was kind of mentioned earlier, if you don't like those, it's okay. In fact, that happened to me when I wrote a book review for South Carolina Libraries. I offered to write a book review kind of after most of what was currently available had already been spoken for. So I wasn't really feeling any of the titles that Elise, who was the editor at the time, had to offer. And so I just went around, I found another publisher in South Carolina, and I asked them if they'd be willing to give me a copy of the book. So if you don't have a book in mind already, if you don't like the books that I offer you when you contact me, and my contact information will be on the last slide, which you'll receive. So don't worry about, I'm very easy to find. If you don't like the options, you can ask me for assistance. I'll be happy to work with you to go outside of the normal list of books that I have to offer to find another one. You could use a copy of a book that you've got on the shelf at your library. That's fine. I think a lot of people would like to have their own copy, and most, if not all, publishers seem to be pretty interested in supplying a book for your review. So here's kind of where I lost my internet connection during Elise's talk. So I want to make sure that you know that if you pick a book that has already been published, generally speaking, the publisher will be happy to send you a print copy of the book. If you, when you receive a list of potential titles from me, you'll see that some of them are forthcoming. So books that have not yet been published, you can't get a hard copy of those, but you can often get a PDF version of those. They can email it to you. I'll send them your email address. I'll send the publisher your email address, and they can get it to you that way. So let's talk a little bit specifically about our guidelines for South Carolina Libraries. The guidelines for book selection at South Carolina Libraries leaves you a lot of room to pick a book that interests you. So if you want to do a book review for this journal, the titles that you're going to review, it'll need to meet at least one of these criteria. Not all of them, but at least one of them. This makes it really easy. So it needs to be written by a South Carolina author and/or address South Carolina create a related content and or, contain content of interest to South Carolina libraries, or be released by a South Carolina publisher, or just be related to libraries. So that makes it really easy. We are, as was mentioned by Alison, we're looking for book reviews that are about 400 to 600 words. So that is pretty easy to do. We're talking a page and a half worth of a typed review. We would like we would like for the book to have been published within the past 2 years. Of course, these should be, for kinds of new books that are coming out. I will say, just so that you know, you'll find all of the information about submissions and information for authors on the website for the journal, which you'll get a little view of in just a bit. But we're expecting APA 7th edition when you write for the journal. So when you write a book review, we want the title, the publisher, the date of publication, the place of publication, include the ISBN, the list price, your name, position, and library, and a line about yourself so we can include a little bit about the author. And this has already been covered a little bit, but just to reiterate, when you're writing a book review, it's great to include information about the quality and value of the material for its intended audience, to comment on the author's or editor's affiliation, subject knowledge, previous publication, writing style, and approach or point of view, critical comparison with similar works, and it's interesting to write about who the intended audience is, recommended age range, and type of library that might want to purchase this title. And of course, just make it fun and interesting. So reviews are accepted on a rolling basis. As was mentioned, there's not usually a firm deadline, but we are going to want to include 3 to 4 book reviews in each issue that we put out, each issue of South Carolina Libraries. So, for example, we'll have our next issue of the journal coming out this winter, and if someone wants to write a book review for the upcoming issue, you will need to have your draft to meet by the end of August. And we'll look at just a moment at how you go about submitting your draft. So let's talk about what happens after you have written your book review and use the really great information provided by our previous presenters. Now you've got your book review draft ready and you want to upload it. So the first thing to note is that the journal, South Carolina Libraries, is hosted and published through the University of South Carolina's institutional repository, Scholar Commons. The Scholar Commons website is scholarcommons.sc.edu. There's also a link in this slide that I have up on the screen. And as I mentioned, we will be sending out the slides that are used today. So you actually submit your book review, or if you're writing some other kind of article for the journal, submit your article through this interface. When you first come to the Scholar Commons website, you can sign up with a username and password, just as you would probably expect to do. As you can see, I've gone through in this slide, I'm showing you the website specifically for South Carolina Libraries. If you look on the left side, there's a submit article link, and it'll ask you to log in or create a new account. This is an open access publication, and when you publish with South Carolina Libraries, you're going to have the ability to retain the right to do a lot of things with your intellectual property. When you are submitting a book review or whatever to South Carolina Libraries, the first thing you're going to do is accept the article submission agreement. And I'm probably preaching to the choir here because I'm talking to librarians, library students, folks who work in libraries. But I just want to make sure everybody knows this is kind of another webinar, but I always like to mention, just make sure that you are reading your submission agreement, because that's going to lay out what your rights to your intellectual property are after you have published. So you can read through and accept the terms of agreement. And then you're going to add information in fields about your article, about your book review. So for a book review, we don't really need like an abstract, that's not required. But you'll include a title, you'll include information about yourself, the author, and do include keywords, because keywords are important metadata that are going to help other people find your work down the line. A book review isn't peer-reviewed, so you don't have to worry about leaving out any kind of identifying information. It's not that kind of article. And then you will click submit, and at that point you've done it. What will happen is the editorial board of the journal will receive an email saying, hey, there's a new one. I probably will have already had some conversations with you through email to help you find a book to review. And so I'll know exactly what's happening, and I'll grab your article from Scholar Commons, and I will do some editing for like grammar and spelling. So my goal is to edit in a way that will make sure book reviews are error-free, without changing any kind of sentiment or being heavy-handed with word choice. And I'll send those edits back to you to make sure we're in agreement with them. So once you've done that, you've submitted it. And, depending on when you submit your article, it might be included in the upcoming issue, or, a subsequent issue if you submit a little later in the game. And as Elise mentioned, it might be a good idea, if you're thinking of getting started with a book review, to have a look at what some other people have done. So I'm going to pull one up. This is off of the South Carolina Library's site. This is a book review written by our colleague Jan Comfort, who recently retired from Clemson University in 2018. And you can see that we have added formatting, we have added a recommended citation. And when your book review is complete and published, we will have produced something that looks kind of like this. And you will have your publication. So that's exciting. Now, that is what I have to add for today. I will also say that since I'm very new at this, it may be possible that someone will have a question that I don't know the answer to, but luckily we have a previous editor here that can also help with that. I want to thank you guys for your attention today, and I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. Please do put any questions that you have in the chat. And this is my contact information. Again, you'll get it later, but please contact me anytime if you have questions about writing book reviews for South Carolina libraries. I'd love to talk to you more about it. Thank you so much. I'm turning it back over to you.
If anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and add it to the chat. And just a reminder that this session has been recorded, and the link to the recording and all of the PowerPoint slides will be sent to all registered participants, hopefully by the end of today. If not by the end of today, then by tomorrow.
there wasn't a question about this, but I would just like to reiterate what both Elise and Stacy said, that, you know, if you want to publish a book review, the best thing you can do is go read a bunch of book reviews at that venue. Because you know exactly what they're looking for, the length, the tone they're after. I mean, and that goes for actually writing anything. Like if you want to write scholarship, go read a bunch of scholarship on that. So that was a really great suggestion from both Stacy and Elise.
And just a reminder that our next webinar is going to be on peer review on August 11th at 2 p.m. If you haven't registered, I'll go ahead and send out the registration link again when I send out the recording to this video. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.